I feel like this video is a long time in the making. I am finally sharing my birth story with you, introducing to the world this guy, Conrad Clifton Burton. He was born on June 2nd, and this is a little late. I actually planned on filming this birth story previous, but just haven't gotten around to it. I have been in the middle of newborn bliss, just soaking up all of the snuggles with this guy and just truly enjoying life. And it's actually been incredible. Conrad's been here now for 10 weeks and it has just been enjoying baby snuggles and not feeling pressure to get back at it hardcore and still bringing in money. And that is why I help women build courses and online signature programs so you can have something that works for you while you can be doing something like this. Anyway, let's get to it. So a little backstory for you. First and foremost, I live in a very small mountain town called Gunnison, Colorado, and I absolutely love living here. I love raising my boys here, but I will say that the hospital is fabulous, but there's no NICU. There is nothing if you don't have a birth that goes well or as planned, you really don't have any other options. They fly you to Grand Junction or Denver, which is 3 hours away or 5 hours away, essentially. So that being said, let me share with you the story of little baby Rad and his birth. So getting ready, going into his birth, his due date was June 9th, and he was born on June 2nd, 2024. And I am a 40-year-old woman over here, so I am of advanced maternal age. So leading up to his birth, when I hit 36 weeks, I had conversations with my doctor about what that would look like if I hit 39, 40 weeks. Evidently, I didn't know this until I was pregnant with him. Once you hit like 38 weeks or so and you're over 40, your placenta starts to calcify and there can be complications with the birth. So my doctor did give me the option of inducing labor at 39 weeks. I will say that I am more of a crunchy mom where I don't want to induce labor. I wanted him to come naturally. I wanted him to come when he was ready. So that was really difficult for me to have that conversation with my doctor, but to also know that if things did go wrong, like we'd have to fly to Denver. And so knowing that, I did decide that at 39 weeks, I would induce labor with him if he had not come naturally by that point. So at my 38-week appointment, so one week before my induction, my doctor offered a membrane sweep, which is kind of a more natural way to get things moving. As you can say, you go to Google membrane sweep. If you don't know what it is, I'll tell you it was not pleasant. And so she offered the membrane sweep. I got that on a Wednesday morning. I was set to be induced on a Monday morning. So this is Wednesday morning at 38 weeks. I got a membrane sweep, and then I went to my local acupuncturist and I got acupuncture to induce labor. So she did the needles for inducing labor. I was there for 30 minutes or so, just relaxing, kind of meditating, envisioning it all happening. She put some ear seeds in. I did some curb walking later on in that afternoon. And I was feeling like Braxton Hicks, kind of, contractions on and off, very, very light. And just knew that, okay, things were progressing, things were happening in my body. My body was preparing. Thursday, I went and got some really spicy Thai food from my favorite Thai restaurant here in town. Did some curb walking, did some bouncing on the ball. Friday, did more bouncing on the ball, curb walking, and just really tried to envision everything happening how it was supposed to, right? That's really the most important thing I think that I did, was just knowing that it was all going to turn out how it was supposed to. Saturday morning comes around and Braden and B went to this fishing derby in town. I told Braden, I was like, I just want a day kind of to rest. I'm pretty tired and I just really want to relax in bed. And so I was relaxing in bed and Googled stretches to induce labor. And the miles circuit came up. So I started doing the miles circuit at like 1 p.m. and boom, my water breaks. Now, I had spoken to a friend that is a doula here in town at length before he was here. And one thing that I knew that I wanted different from B's birth, so B was born April 2020 during COVID in the Gunnison Hospital. It was actually a really great experience because I didn't have to wear a mask. All the doctors and nurses wore masks. We were the only people giving birth in the hospital. There's only 2 birthing suites. So it's, like I said, it's a really small hospital in a small mountain town. But what I didn't like is that my water broke actually on B's due date. And I went into labor immediately, started having contractions, went to the hospital pretty quickly, was not far along at all. So they did have to give me Pitocin and a Foley bulb and all this other stuff to like bring along labor. Because once your water breaks and you go to the hospital, you have to have the baby within 24 hours. Anyway, they had to do a lot of intervention to get him moving along. And then I ended up pushing for like 3.5 hours and it was terrible. You do not want to push for 3.5 hours. It was not fun. So I knew with him that once my water broke, I wanted to labor at home as long as possible. I also only live like 4 blocks from the hospital. So water breaks at 1:30 in the afternoon. I call Braden. I'm like, do not freak out, but my water just broke. My contractions are really far apart. Like, I'm just going to chill here. And he, of course, was like, okay, but kind of freaked out, right? Because he's a dude. So he came home with B. They just hung out and played. And around 4 p.m, we called our friends who B was going to go over to their house when I was in labor to go have a little sleepover play date. So Braden took him over there around 5 p.m, I believe. And I was still just like hanging out, walking around. Around 5 is when I started tracking my contractions on an app because I felt like they were getting kind of stronger. They were every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes, some were every 10 minutes, and then they would kind of go up again. But I was still able to breathe through everything. Braden asked me what I wanted for dinner. And I wanted a cheeseburger from the Power Stop, which is a local restaurant here. 10 out of 10, do not recommend eating a greasy cheeseburger before going into labor. Will not elaborate on that. You can use your imagination. Was not a good choice. And so it was like 6 and I was like, all right, I'm feeling good. 7, we watched a movie. And then around 9:30, Braden was like, all right, like, don't you think we should go to the hospital or just at least like let your doctor know that you're in labor and that she should be preparing to come into the hospital tonight? And I was like, yeah, I'll like go grab my bag and maybe we'll head over there soon. Well, 10:30, we get in the car to head over there. And I was fine up to that point. I swear the second we got in the car, I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening. I was like, oh, my contractions got a lot stronger. I was like, I am in labor. This is happening. So we got to the hospital, we check in. This is the point that I was like, this is not happening. They check my dilation. They're like, oh, you're only 3 centimeters dilated. In order to have a baby and push, you must be 10 centimeters dilated. I had been in labor now for like 8, 9 hours, 10 hours, and they're telling me I'm 3 centimeters dilated. It's 11 p.m. on June 1st. I'm like, this cannot be happening. And at that point, my contractions were getting fast and furious and just like starting to come like every 3 minutes. I'm like, there is no way I'm only 3 centimeters dilated, because that's what happened with B. I went in and they're like, oh, you're 2 centimeters dilated. And then I did not progress. And so they had to give me all the medication and stuff to progress. And so I was like, this is not happening again. There's no way. My contractions are so close together right now and so intense. The noises coming out of me were the most primal, feral noises you've ever heard in your entire life. Braden was mortified. he was like, oh my gosh, because there was other people in the hospital at this time, and not soundproof walls. Like everybody heard me have a baby. Let's just say that much. So it's like 11:30. I'm like, okay, you need to call in the epidural lady, the anesthesiologist, because they have to call them in. It takes about 30 minutes for them to get to the hospital and to get everything set up. It takes about 45 minutes for them to actually get to you. So I'm like, okay, like I don't care. I'm only 3 centimeters dilated. Something is happening in my body and you need to call this girl in. So they call in the anesthesiologist. I cannot say that word. And she gets there around 12:30. And like I said, it is the most primal, feral sounds coming out of my body. My doula said, keep it low, low sounds, bring the baby low, high sounds, keep the baby high. So I am going low. I already have a low voice. And like, I mean, these contractions were coming like I'm talking like 45 seconds. It was happening. And this was from 11:30 to like 12:15 when she gets there. And I like cannot sit still. And she's like, you need to sit still in order to get this epidural in. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I just sit still for like 3 minutes through contraction for her to get the epidural in. They get the epidural in and they check me and they're like, oh, you're like 8.5 centimeters dilated. You're about to have a baby. They're like, do you want to like try to slow down and rest really quickly before this baby comes now that you have the epidural? Or do you want to push forward? And I was like, I want to slow down and rest for a second. I was so spent from that 45 minutes of going from 3 centimeters to 8.5, almost 9 centimeters. I mean, it just happened so quickly. So I rested for about an hour or so, and they had the heart rate monitor on me, but they kept kind of like losing the heart rate and kept having to come in and like readjust me. So now it's like, I don't know. I guess I napped for like an hour and a half. And then around 2:30 in the morning, the doctor came in and was like, okay, you're 10 centimeters. It's time to push. At that point, the epidural kicked in. I felt great. And they were like, but his heart rate, we keep losing it. So the heart rate monitor, they took it off of my stomach and they like drilled a little pinprick heart rate monitor into his head, like went up, drilled this little heart rate monitor into his head. And they were like, oh, every time you're contracting, his heart rate is dropping down to 50. They're like, we need to get him out now. Once again, small hospital. Doctor stayed really calm. They propped me up. So I'm like holding on to the top of the hospital bed, facing it, like with my arms over it, pushing down. She was like, you're going to do 3 breaths, like 3 contractions here pushing. And then we're going to flip you and you're going to do 3 contractions on your back pushing. And we're going to get this guy out. And I was like, sweet. I had Dr. Villanueva, if you live here locally in Gunnison. So did the 3 pushes there. Heart rate kept dropping. They're like, we need to get this dude out right now. Flipped me on my back. They're like, you need to give me everything you have. Braden was like, oh, standing there. And so pushed. He started coming out. Pushed again. He started coming out. She was like, I'm getting the vacuum. We have to get him out on this push. Like, we just have to. So I pushed. She vacuumed. 3:02 a.m. on June 2nd. He came out. It was wild. 6 pushes. It was wild. I cried. He was crying. I think the doctors cried a little bit too because of the power stop burger. Braden definitely was traumatized. And they put him on me immediately, but it was different. With B, they let B like get on me for a while. With him, they immediately took him over to this respiratory thing because he was struggling to breathe a little bit because his cord was wrapped 3 times around his neck. So they actually brought in a respiratory specialist to check on his breathing, which ended up being fine. We both kind of rested while they were just checking on him. And okay, so this was like 3:30 in the morning. We had not slept all night. mind you, Braden and I were like, we have not been up this late in a long time because we are not partiers. Really, oh gosh, we're tired. 5 a.m, they come to take my epidural out. So like 2 hours later, they come to take my epidural out. They cannot get the port out, which evidently is like this long. They can't get it out. They're like, oh, we've never had this happen before. So Braden's sitting in a chair holding our newborn son that is 2 hours old. They're trying to get the epidural port out. It is stuck in my back. They go into the, they're like, we're going to try to look this up. They're like trying to look it up. We've never had this happen before. They're YouTubing it, I'm pretty sure. I am horrified at this point. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is stuck in my back. Like, you need to call the anesthesiologist back in. They're like, okay, we will. So they text her and she's like, well, did you try this? And the ladies are like, yes, we tried everything. You need to come back in. So at this point, I'm kind of freaking out. Like, I just had this baby. Everything went fine. But this is stuck in my back. And this hurts. And every time I try to pull it out, like, I can feel it. Like, this is not good. You get the anesthesiologist in. She tries pulling it. Can't get it out. Ends up making me, like, curl up like a little C on my back. Gets it out. Thank God. That was terrifying. Like, telling a newborn mom that's just had a baby 2 hours ago that there's, like, something stuck in your spine. I 10 out of 10 recommended the epidural. It helped me a lot. But in that situation, it was terrifying. So we finally, after 12 hours of giving birth, got into a birthing suite. We were just like in the room we gave birth in because there were other people. Like I said, there's only 2 birthing suites in this hospital. So there's other people that had babies. They heard everything, got into the birthing suite, and we just hung out with him. The nurses there were absolutely fabulous, helping us out. Here in Gunnison, like, they'll offer to take your baby, like, while you're sleeping. We don't have like a daycare or anything, but they'll take your baby out into the nurses' lounge and just like watch them while they sleep so you can sleep too, or they'll hold them or change their diapers or whatever. So they did that with Conrad some. They did that with B as well. Got some good sleep, some good recovery, and we were out of the hospital, you know, the next day, Monday. So he was born Sunday, June 2nd at 3 a.m. We were out Monday by noon and at home. And we waited to get home to introduce B to Rad just because I didn't want B to come into the hospital and see our little family unit there and then have to leave. I don't know. I just like wanted to be at home and have him be home. And I'll tell you this much, and maybe I'll do another video on this. Everybody talks about how when you see your kids together for the first time, when you have a second, that your heart just absolutely explodes. And my heart did explode, but also my anxiety went sky freaking high because B is 4 and Conrad was 3 days old. And my son doesn't understand that, like, he is fragile at that point. Like, you need to support his neck. You can't jump over him on the couch. You can't poke at him all the time, right? And so I had this like new little fragile baby. My hormones were insane. I did get my placenta encapsulated. There's a local woman here that does it. So we took our placenta home with us. We just simply we told the doctor and the nurses when we arrived at the hospital that that's what we wanted to do. And they put it in a freezer for us and put it in a cooler. And we got to take it and give it to the lady that encapsulated it. But your hormones are wild that week after giving birth. And I don't know anybody that handles it really well with grace and ease. I just remember a lot of crying, a lot of just emotions up and down. And like I said, the feeling of anxiety, which I had never really had postpartum with B, of having my 2 kids together. And I didn't really expect that. Nobody really prepared me for like that feeling of anxiety and kind of terror that my 4-year-old was going to hurt my newborn. The placenta encapsulation helped. Talking to my husband helped. Knowing that this was just a phase helped a lot with my postpartum journey. And I feel great now. But yeah, it was definitely a week or 2 there that was pretty rough and healing my body. healing my mindset, knowing that life was a little bit different now that we had 2 kids. But once again, I had my business was running for me. It was such a blessing. I had enrollments coming in during that time period, and because my systems that were in place, and it just felt so good knowing that my business was working for me, that money was coming into my bank account, and I was able just to focus on myself and healing myself. My mom flew in town a week after giving birth, so I had help for 10 days, and then she actually flew back east with B, and B went home with my mom and my mother-in-law. They lived about 30 minutes apart for 3 weeks. So we had time just getting used to little Conrad and really kind of for me to heal and adjust. And then my mother-in-law flew back out with B and was here for 3 weeks helping us out as well. So it was a great, like the first 8 weeks, besides that first week postpartum, we had help, or B was with family on a trip. So we were able to kind of just be with him, because it's definitely an adjustment 1 to 2 kids. And I was definitely healing a lot. My body is still healing. And something that my doctor really told me this time that stuck with me was that my placenta, she was like, you have just an open wound in your body. Like, you have to take it easy. You have to give yourself grace. You have to know that, like, you are in this space right now that you just need to chill. And so it was such a blessing to have help from family, and my community was amazing. I get so many meals delivered from friends, and it was just incredible. So it was actually a really great postpartum experience this time around. And I just feel so lucky to have 2 healthy, beautiful baby boys, and to be able to ease back into work. I'm 10 weeks postpartum right now. I'm easing back into work. I am earning income still, right? I'm still having people enroll, but I have all my systems in place so that when they enroll, everything is set up for them to have success and for me to only work minimally, probably about 5 hours a week right now. So yeah, feels great. First couple of weeks at home with Conrad. He is incredible. He was 8 pounds, which was a big baby for Gunnison. Once again, I live at high elevation as well. So babies born at high elevation, I'm at around 8,000 feet, are actually typically smaller. So to have, because lack of oxygen, so to have an 8-pound baby, it's pretty good. So yeah, over here healing, feeling great. And I just want to say thank you everybody for your well wishes, and hopefully you enjoyed my birth story, and I will be back. I'm back in action. I'm going to be filming a new series. So videos coming every single week again for you, all about running your business so that fits in your life, not living a life that you're living to work, right? Like, I want to teach you how to be able to create your course, create a business so you can live more in life. And here he comes. He's waking up. We're finishing up. Perfect timing. I will talk to you all later. And remember, the world is your oyster. I'll talk to you soon.